2, 1.
New York, NY. LaunchPod starts now.
Welcome to the New York LaunchPod, the New York Press Club award-winning podcast on the most interesting new startups, businesses, and openings in the New York City area. I'm your host and New York attorney Hal Cooper-Smith, and in this episode, we talk to Laura Schubert and Lillian Tung, the co-founders of Fur. And at this point, we're going to bring on our producer and paralegal at Cooper-Smith & Cooper-Smith, Andrew Kane. Andrew, you were surprised when we first interviewed Fur. They're a pubic hair and body care products company, and you thought that was very niche. But Fur's really had a lot of growth in their business since we first spoke to them.
That's right. Since Fur stepped onto the New York LaunchPod a year ago, they've doubled their sales and tripled their retail presence while normalizing the conversation around body hair and body hair grooming. Here's Laura Schubert.
Definitely there's a conversation around pubic. There's also just a conversation around body care. I think the consumer changes, and we definitely have different ways we can talk to the different consumers, so that's changed. But I also just think people are more comfortable.
In this episode, we revisit that conversation about pubic and body hair and talk to Laura and Lillian about the growth of their company, how they continue to expand their market reach, and all their brand new products in our series we call How You Doing?
Hey, how you doing?
How you doing?
I'm doing good.
How you doing? I'm doing good.
I'm doing good. What'd you say?
I'm good. Hey, you? I'm walking in.
Fantastic.
What'd you say?
How you doing?
So the last time you were here, we talked about the conversation around pubic hair and pubic hair grooming. What is the state of the pubic hair conversation now?
Even since we were on New York LaunchPod a year ago, the conversation around pubic hair has become a lot more open. There's definitely still a taboo and a stigma around pubic hair, but we've launched in ULTA, we've expanded in ULTA, and just in general, I find that when I meet people, I tell them that I have a pubic hair and skincare company, and honestly, people don't bat an eyelash anymore. So that's really been a big change.
I mean, I'd say on top of that, it's not that they don't bat an eyelash. They sometimes say, oh, we've heard of Fur. We've heard of you. And that's definitely changed because not only are they not afraid, they're actually very excited to be talking about pubic hair with us.
Well, I'm glad you came back on and you're saying that because I feel something similar, and I don't know if I'm biased because we did the interview or I'm following you on social media, but has there been anything that you think has changed and made people more open? Because we certainly talked a lot about how people were resistant the last time.
It's not like there's one, huge event, I think, that did it. I think it's a bunch of little things that have just come together over time, right? Like this whole movement towards body positivity, right? That's definitely something that's encouraged men and women to talk more openly about how they view themselves. Same thing with wellness. Of course, there's definitely the Me Too movement and gender equality. So all those and so many other little things, including, Fur launching in 2016 and really putting our stake in the ground and saying we are here to talk about pubic hair and pubic hair care. All those things came together to move the conversation to where it is today.
And it seems like there's been more media, and obviously the New York LaunchPod helped legitimize you. But since then you were on Hustle, which is on Vice, a lot of other publications. What's been the media reaction to your story now as opposed to what it's been in the past?
Well, when we launched, there were definitely certain publications that said they would never write about pubic hair, and they have all at this point written about us. So that's been definitely just a huge change. Again, there's just been a different level of acceptance. And we definitely found that, when we launched our most recent product, bath drops, that, again, press, they knew us, we had a relationship with them, but it's just, there just wasn't a feeling anymore that they could not write about us.
And in terms of the stores, I want to play this quote for you.
For all retailers that are resistant, it's not a no, it's a not yet. We just revisit. We say, okay. Because again, we are pushing the boundary. We are creating a new category, and people might just not be ready for the message yet. And that's sort of okay.
And now you're in a lot more stores. How has that been?
That's actually a pretty interesting question because I've been thinking a lot about our sales strategy in 2020. And I do feel like, in a way, the question has become much less how do we get into stores and more which stores do we get into and how do we maintain and grow those relationships. So that is a big difference in the business.
So how are you thinking you're going to grow those relationships?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's what levers do you pull, right? There's definitely digital levers, so we can do more digital advertising. We can also hire field sales. We can go to conferences. So I think we're definitely at a different level of it's good high class problems, I would say, with our retailers.
High class problems. What's the growth been?
Oh, it continues to be exponential across.
Exponential.
Yeah.
Let's get a hard number there.
Over 3 times.
Over 3 times in the past year?
Yes, versus a year ago.
So how are you managing all that growth?
Thankfully, we have an amazing team. I mean, that's first and foremost.
Yes, answer number one.
Answer number one, which is compared to just a year ago, we had 1 full-time employee and a couple interns. At this point now, we have 7 employees full-time, me and Laura as well, and 2 interns. Yeah, me and Laura, just hanging around, and then 2 interns. So the team, I mean, has been really core and key to the growth and keeping everything moving and keeping the passion going because they are so passionate about what we do as well. It's not just me and Laura driving the mission forward anymore.
So the team is critical, but you also have an inventory distribution. How are you managing all of that?
I'm still managing our inventory because that's pretty important also just from a working capital perspective to have a very close handle on that. And so I'd say that's actually sort of key too, is that I think Lillian has the closest handle on the marketing budget and I have the closest handle on working capital inventory. And so those are definitely responsibilities that I feel we will keep between ourselves for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are just so important to the growth and then the sustainability of the company. One thing, I mean, we mentioned it last time, we are still self-funded. And again, that's why every dollar, whether it's going to go into inventory or marketing, is a dollar that we have a conversation, me and Laura, about because that has to be very closely managed in order to make sure we're still growing and growing profitably.
Well, being self-funded is certainly part of the story. And then the last time you were here, you talked about how once Emma Watson had endorsed the product, you ran out of inventory. So, Laura, you're in charge of the inventory. Obviously there's 3 times the growth, the working capital. Are there concerns about running out of inventory? I mean, for businesses that are on that channel and are self-funded, how are you specifically more able to manage that inventory?
Well, the great news is that we actually have increasing, I'd say, better deals with our vendors now than we used to. So better deals, better relationships, and we are working with only vendors who can support us as we grow. So I think that's a key piece of the whole thing, actually.
And part of your growth story, in addition to increasing sales, you're launching new products, which you alluded to. How are you coming up with new products? You've developed some products, and now there's a proliferation. Like I saw, there's a washcloth. How did that idea come to be?
So we get our ideas from a variety of sources. Definitely what me and Laura really want to see, but also what from talking to our customers. So we really love to talk to both our direct-to-consumer customer, right, so our end user, but we also love to talk to estheticians about what they want to see for their clients. And that's really how a lot of the most recent products came about. So specifically, the Silk Scrub Exfoliator, that was born out of estheticians. The on-the-go wipes, both the Ingrown Eliminator and the washcloth you'd mentioned, those came from our customers who wanted something that they could take with them when they went traveling. The most recent launch, Bath Drops, was something that Laura and I really loved because, we're children of the 90s and we wanted something, we remembered them and we really love the idea of bath time as a ritual. It works so well within the fur brand experience. But the bath drops of the 90s were, bad for you, full of artificial ingredients. They were made with animal products. So we're like, okay, there's a real opportunity to take that and make it a fur experience. And so that one came from me and Laura. So really, a variety of inspiration points.
And that being said, we've actually been working on that product for 2 years. So we were working on that product when we were last here. It took us that long to do a global sourcing project to find a facility that could make vegan bath beads. And we're the only manufacturer of those in the world.
What about the candle?
That is a limited edition run done by our friends in a local Brooklyn studio. And it's inspired, again, by your bath ritual and a lot of feedback from our customers who say, I love the way fur oil smells. It turns my entire bath experience into a spa. Like, how can I have that as a more ongoing experience? And to us, it's the holiday season. It's cold. What's better than not taking a bath and having a warm bathroom that smells great? So it's a limited edition run, though. We have very few left.
And part of your story is inventing this category, and obviously the resistance that you had when you invented the category. What about now that you've paved the path, about people maybe entering into your lane, which is a total different conversation than before, but now that there's more of a conversation around body hair and people are less uncomfortable about it, what about more of the bigger brands coming in?
Well, there definitely is increased competition. We do have some direct competitors now, but we've also always said we haven't created a category until we have competitors. So that's actually step one to success. If no one's following you, then you're not really onto something, are you? So we do believe we're the first mover. We are the leaders in the space today, and we will continue to be. But that also informs our distribution strategy and everything else.
And so, what is it like having competition now? Because you didn't have it before.
I mean, I can tell you, media used to tell us it's really hard to write about you guys because there's like some rule about, really have to have like 3 data points or 3 companies to write about before it can like make a story. And they're like, and there's only you. And now, if you look at recent press, I mean, we're definitely always up there with anyone else that comes into the space, or, they reference us as, the category creators in 2016, and look who are the new entrants. So again, it's just validation for us. It's actually been helpful. The voice and the conversation has gotten larger, but we're still up there in that conversation, and that's really important. And it's also interesting because there's a nuance. There's always a variety of options and ways to talk about pubic hair care, and I think each brand that has come into the space has done it in a very unique way. Ours is really, being a matter of fact about it, talking about it in a straightforward way that's non-gendered. Right, so we talk about pubic hair. Both men and women have it. None of our products are specifically geared towards one or the other. And again, our demographic of our consumers reflects that. I think some other brands, aren't necessarily like that, but that's okay because they have, a core consumer that's different than ours. But it's a larger conversation.
Well, the last time you said it was 70% female and 30% male. Is that still the case?
Yep.
And in terms of now that you have more years under your belt, you talked about consumers coming back to you. Do you have more data on that and how frequent consumers are coming back to you?
Yes, but that's a little bit confidential. I can say our repeat purchase rate is really nice, and loyalty is very high. And
so the growth, obviously there are two ways of growing: new customer acquisition and then your existing customer base. Your customer base is now growing, and so you have more of an opportunity for repeat customers. But how has that growth been for new customers and existing customers?
We highly value, of course, our repeat loyal customers, and they are one of our biggest channels of acquisition just through word of mouth. That being said, much of our marketing dollars, because we're a new company and it's growing, is spent on acquiring new customers because, not that we really can assess a market penetration because we're such a small company, but the percentage of our actual market penetration right now is not nearly where we know we can be. So we have to get our brand in front of new people.
And you've grown 3 times in the past year, 3x
Yes.
in the past year. How many stores are you in now versus a year ago?
That's more than 3x.
More than
Right.
3x.
Yeah. We're definitely in over 1,000 stores today. And I think it was, I think it was several hundred.
Yeah.
Well, because the big change that's been made is that we moved into ULTA Beauty. And then they actually doubled our store count. And so we're in over 800 Ultas now.
Yeah. So that's, our store count, I think quadrupled in the last year.
So that's unbelievable. How have you been able to manage those relationships?
I think we're still learning, but again, so that's a very important relationship for us, and we've been very impressed with their team so far. Our team, sort of our counterpart at ULTA, they've been extremely supportive. They really want us to succeed, which is again something that you worry about as a small brand, as a new brand. Will they swallow you whole, basically, because they're so big? But we've been very impressed with the level of support we've received, and we're just trying to make the best of that opportunity.
What keeps you up at night?
For me, that's an easy one. Digital marketing and where we're spending it, how we're spending it, and how much it's costing to acquire those new customers we just talked about.
And I'd say on my end, well, number one, talent management, because again, we love our team and we do have a team of around 10, but increasingly my time is spent thinking about how we can keep those people happy, keep those people motivated, keep those people with us, find the next people who are going to bring our business to the next level. And then I'd say my next concern would be keeping Ulta happy and our other retailers and continue to grow those relationships, because we are in a different position this year where we have won those retailers. We are in those doors, and now we have to continue to knock the socks off our retailers.
Right. So part of the story is managing the growth. And how do you see yourself managing this growth? You've grown 3x in the past year. Maybe next year it'll be even larger. Certainly hope so. But how do you keep the core of what Fur is as you grow?
That's a great question.
I think that's still, again, we're still so small and so early in our journey that I think that is still not as difficult to keep together, especially given the team that we have. But I could definitely see that becoming a bigger issue going forward.
And Lillian, from a digital marketing standpoint, I think from Hustle, the TV show, they talked about how on Instagram it was hard to market and have that conversation. Is it becoming easier to market pubic hair products as this conversation expands?
Absolutely, yes. And actually, that's a point I haven't really talked about openly very much. But yes, I mean, it's been night and day. And I really do think, again, it's all those little things I mentioned coming together, and Facebook understanding that, like, if you show someone applying lotion to their leg, that is not sexual in nature. If you use the word pubic on an ad, that's not sexual. And so those disapprovals don't happen anymore. And also, I think it's on our side, our team, our creative team has also learned a little bit of the landmines and how to avoid it, so you don't have to like waste your time going back and forth.
And so there was resistance. And then how have you found a technique in terms of getting around that resistance that people have, right? So you have a few years under your belt. People were pubic, that's sexual, that's, a little too far out there. Have you found different ways of having that conversation to get around that initial resistance?
Definitely there's a conversation around pubic. There's also just a conversation around body care. I think the consumer changes, and we definitely have different ways we can talk to the different consumers. So that's changed. But I also just think people are more comfortable.
Yeah, I would say we don't try to change our messaging too much.
Although different parts of the messaging appeal to different people.
Absolutely. Yeah. But, like Laura says, every no that we've ever encountered is not just a not yet.
And that's also why our positioning has always been that we're not a rebel brand, we're a care brand, and we're trying to create a safe, elevated, comfortable space where people can talk about pubic hair or even just reframe the way they think about it. And so that's very important to us as a brand.
And where do you see Fur going? Because we're checking in with you after 1 year. What does the next year look like? And then what about beyond that?
We have a few product launches in store for 2020, so at least 2. So definitely expanding our product line, although we always intend to be a pretty concentrated brand. Also because getting back to sort of we have a mission, we want to stay on mission, we are self-funded, there are working capital constraints. You can't launch everything. And so we're very conscious of that. So launching 2 products next year, and then continuing with our distribution, again, supporting those 1,000 stores, I think is going to be a key consideration for 2020.
Well, that is a great note to end things on. Laura Schubert, Lillian Tung, thank you for stepping back on the New York Launch Pod. How do people find out more about you and Fur?
Follow us on Instagram, fur_you, YOU, or just furu.com.
And if you want to learn more about the New York Launch Pod, you can follow us at NY Launch Pod or visit us at nylaunchpod.com for transcripts of every episode, including this one. And if you are super fans like Lillian Tung and Laura Schubert, are you still super fans?
Yeah, we're signed up onto your email list.
They're signed up on the email list. You can sign up for an email on our email list if you're a super fan. And please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It is greatly appreciated and does help people discover the show.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the New York Launch Pod. For more information, please visit nylaunchpod.com.